This is NEGOTIATEx TV.
Hello and welcome to the NEGOTIATEx podcast. I am your host and co-founder Nolan Martin. With me today is my good friend, co-founder Aram Denesian. Aram, how's it going, man? How are you doing?
I'm good. It's a beautiful day here. How are things in your neck of the woods?
It's actually rainy and it's still into March, and cold. So I'm hoping that it gets warmer soon, and I'm looking forward to all the flowers and trees and everything coming back. So it's really what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, it's always that breath of new life, right? That's kind of the fun of spring starting. Although up where I live, we kind of call the beginning of spring mud season, and so not as enjoyable and pleasant. Just get kind of wet and mucky for a while. But you got to deal with the bad though if you want to enjoy the good, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I am glad that I'm not living up there. I don't think I could do that, at least not right now. So, hey, let's jump right into it. Now, this is a question that got brought up. I was doing military training recently with an organization, and one thing that I think really stood out to the participants of the training was really digging into interests. And when we think about interest, thinking about it from the company, the organizational perspective, and then the individual perspective. So, Aram, without further ado, let's jump into this podcast. How's that sound?
That sounds great. Yeah, I think interest comes up quite a bit, Nolan. We define interest as what motivates a party to negotiate in the first place. It's what they're trying to satisfy through a negotiated agreement. We would give it further definition, and we would distinguish interest from positions. Positions being wants, demands, kind of singular solutions to a problem. To interest being the underlying needs, fears, concerns, and motivations that again are driving somebody to negotiate.
Yeah, and I think that if we're first starting at the organizational level, I think we can kind of talk about the framework, and then I'll pass it over to you to really dig in deep to each of the different aspects. So, when you're talking about organizational interest, you're really thinking about the strategic, the financial, the operational, relational, and then we're going to add that fifth component, and that's personnel. All of these are going to be interest of the organization. So, Aram, with strategic organizational interest, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, so I think we're talking, building a brand image, being able to keep customers happy, managing risk really well, particularly in this volatile environment that we have experienced between a pandemic and now a war in Eastern Europe that is affecting so many things. I mean, we just need to manage risks, streamline chain constraints. Oftentimes businesses are trying to manage their margins. They're looking to expand into adjacent markets or potentially respond to preemptively to different competition that they're anticipating, competitive threats. Expanding their product line, their services, maybe to existing customers or to future customers. So they might be trying to expand their customer base. Obviously, organizationally, companies are always trying to increase efficiencies of their operations. How they're handling fixed costs versus variable costs, and managing their cash flow, and all those things show up so often in interest. And to your last point too, they're trying to manage human talent, right? It's very costly to let your employees turn out, have a high turnover rate with employees. So they're trying to keep people engaged, keep people happy. That's a number of things that the companies are trying to achieve through negotiation.
Yeah, and so whenever you're negotiating, and you really just have to think about what's the overall different interests, so that as you start to prepare and plan how you're going to move through the negotiation, you at least have some sort of thought. And these are assumptions, and we can always test our assumptions as we talk with our counterparts to really understand the interest of all of the different stakeholders that are involved in the negotiation. So, anything else here? Do you have anything else to share with the organization?
Yeah, so I just yeah, I would build on what you said about we do make assumptions about what their interests might be. If we prepare well in negotiation, we've spent time thinking about ours, and I know we're going to get into individual interests in a moment, but we thought about our organization's interests, and hopefully we've spent some time thinking about their organization's interests. And so as we get into the negotiation, a few helpful things to kind of start getting the conversation flowing around interests are, is sharing our own, building some reciprocity, get them to share back, and inquire about theirs, right? I've thought about what yours might be. Curious what I have wrong. Let me test my assumptions. I understand what your position is, why that position, how does that help you? Those are some good ways to really get to those underlying organizational concerns they might have.
And so what makes this all very complex is that, the individual also has interests. So although it may be an organizational negotiation, that individual that is your counterpart is going to also have some, for probably not for selfish concerns, but definitely some of their own interests. Isn't that right, Aaron?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think you've said it well, and I think sometimes our tendency now, if we've done a good job of thinking about our organization's interests and their organization's interests, is we start to forget that there's a human being there across the table from us, right? Or hopefully, if we've reframed the setting, maybe next to us at the table, and we're solving this problem, and that person has interests too, and those come in a variety of shapes too, right? They're trying to earn a bonus perhaps, or meet a certain performance metric, or they're trying to just avoid the hassle or inconvenience of going back and explaining to their boss something that is opposite of what their boss wanted. They've got interests around building new skills, demonstrating some competency as a negotiator, as a problem solver at the table. They're probably looking for both immediate and future positioning career opportunities within the organization. They're trying to maintain internal relationships. If this is a long term, I can imagine a long term kind of supplier relationship. They're concerned about keeping us happy and are maintaining that relationship, but not at any cost, right? At a fair, it's doing something that's fair and reasonable. And I think if you get a little higher up, we sometimes talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I mean, people want to be respected. They want to do work that really has meaning and matters for the world or matters for the organization. And so I think those sort of things come into play too. We often think about interest as being not just the tangible or substance components to a negotiation, but also being some of those psychological and emotional things too that are occurring for a person and to an organization as well.
Yeah, and I think jumping into psychology 101 here, I'll kind of rewind a little and explain the Maslow's hierarchy. I'm sure majority of our listeners have already heard this once in their life, but I'll basically go over it one more time. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is basically a pyramid, and at the base level, you have your physiological needs. And so these are the most important things that someone needs to satisfy before they can start getting at the other levels, which I'll get to here. Now, so the fourth level is going to be safety needs. So as long as they feel safe, then that addresses that level. Then you're going to have belongingness and love. So it's a third level up from the bottom. Then at the second level to the top, you're going to have esteem needs. And then at the very top is self-actualization. So what Aram just said is that we can't immediately jump to trying to put someone's name on a library and think that we have satisfied safety needs. So if there's a safety concern, that needs to be addressed first before we can really start digging at interests that may be up and above that on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Does that make sense, Aaron?
Yeah, it does, and I think the discipline is in digging around what those needs are. Let me give you an illustration that I like using. I walk in the other day to our kitchen, and my two youngest daughters, who are 5 and 3, are fighting over the very last orange that we have um, in the house. Okay, and my 5-year-old, who's a little taller, is holding up over her head and says, "I got the orange. I got the orange. It's mine. It's mine." And I walk in, right, and they're just, and I'm trying to get work done. I can't remember if you and I maybe have been on a call or something, but anyway, so I grab the orange, right, and in the wisdom of Solomon, I grab this thing, which I know looks very scary. This was a gift from my mother. It's a meat cleaver, right? But I grab it, and in the wisdom of Solomon, I put it down and I chop that orange in half. Problem solved. They both get half the orange, right? Problem solved. But the problem's not really solved, is it? Because if I watch them for a little bit, I notice something. I noticed the 3-year-old who has sugar problems carefully. I mean, she just needs energy. She's hungry all the time. It seems like she's growing. She's a grown little lady. She's peels the orange very carefully, eats the fruit of the orange, but she doesn't feel great because she really needed to satisfy her hunger. She really needed a whole orange. And she really needed that sugar from an entire orange. And if I watch my 5-year-old who's just starting to learn how to bake and has a great class that she goes to of kids, and she had promised them she'd bring in some chocolate orange brownies. Well, if I watch her, she takes her half of the orange and she carefully peels it, and then she uses the orange peel. She grates it to make some chocolate orange brownies, but she can only make a half batch. So now she's not going to have enough for the entire class. She's going to let her teacher down, and she's going to let her classmates down. And so she's disappointed, right? She's frustrated. They had different interests that I didn't take the time to uncover. And had I done that, I could have potentially solved for the real problem. And that's why, kind of as you lay out Maslow's, it's really important to spend time digging into these layers of interest.
And that's not the only story or the only illustration that we're going to bring to this. And for those of you who are just listening to the podcast, Aram just actually went through all of that in the video. So check it out. It's going to be on YouTube. So
you get to see me wielding a meat cleaver. How
you did an awesome job explaining this, though. Like, I could have visualized it even if I wasn't watching you down here on my screen. So great job with that. Hey, thanks for checking out this video on NEGOTIATEx TV. If you found any value at all, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification icon if you want to be notified of future videos. And then we also have a couple videos over here that you might be interested in checking out. If you in your small business, your team, are looking to get negotiations or leadership training, then you can head over to NEGOTIATEx.com and learn more about the coaching services we offer. Thanks, and I'll see you over in the next video.